for this time together. If you're visiting our service for the first time, if you're new to River Road or you're feeling new, please send an email after the service to connections@rruc.org with your name so that we can greet you and help you get connected to all the many networks of relationship that this place serves to build. Today, our service will be available, of course, right here on Zoom, also on YouTube and on our podcast. And this week, we know, because we can't unknow it, this week marks 1 year of complicated anniversaries. Since congregations across the nation, including ours, went online, since the last day many of our children saw the inside of a classroom, since the last regular picture on your camera roll. And yet life is so much more than a sequence of anniversaries. It is triumphs and the deepest losses. It is anger and hope. It is a reason to keep on hoping. And so for today's Zoom service, we're joined by UU faith leaders from across the nation, preaching along with me to reflect on this unimaginable, unforgettable year. One of our reflections will be a blessing of the masks. So if you have 1 or 10 masks handy, the ones that have kept you safe for so long, you might place it nearby. Today, we welcome clergy from Louisiana, Arizona, Wilmington, Delaware, the Midwest, New England, and of course, right here in our nation's capital, to preach and reflect on hope, knowing that the story is so much bigger than any one little corner of the nation or the world. So welcome. Welcome to this place and to all the places where we remember and honor the larger story of which we are a part. Our chalice lighting is from one of the sacred texts brought to bear in our lives and in the world this year, from Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb. The new dawn blooms, and we free it. For there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it. Come, let us worship together.
Please join us in singing the hymn, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Hi, I'm Jana Kirkman. You may recognize me from my singing in the choir. I'm kind of easy to spot. Or I may have taught your children in RE or advised them in youth group. Or I may know you from a committee or from the Black Lives Matter Vigil or just from Fellowship Hour. My spouse, David Whitman, and I have been attending River Road since before we had our older kid, Owen, now 22 years old, and our daughter, Robin, is now 20. So this really is home to us. Our kids grew up completely within the River Road RE program, and even as it changed and evolved, it always helped David and me teach our children our Unitarian Universalist values. In particular, the strong and grounding coming of age curriculum and sustaining youth program under Beth Irakura helped our kids frame and articulate their values and know what is important to them. I believe that is why my kids have been choosing, since they were 13 and 14, to spend almost every Friday evening standing at River and Whittier witnessing that Black Lives Matter. The Roadside Witness has been going on for well over 6 years now, and the Black Lives Matter banner has been hanging out front of the building for that long as well, being replaced over a dozen times due to theft and vandalism. While we suspended the weekly vigil during the stay-at-home order of the pandemic, it has been reinstated with social distancing and masks and continues without further interruption in all weather. The support of the congregation for the vigil has never flagged during the pandemic, and that's just one more way in which we know that River Road UU congregation is our true spiritual home. Our support for River Road will not flag either. We have always made it a family priority to pledge to the stewardship campaign. This year, we will gladly increase our giving. Thank you for all you do for River Road.
Hello everyone, it's Reverend Amanda Weatherspoon, your Associate Minister. Today's Time for All Ages is about the spring equinox. The spring equinox marks the beginning of spring in our hemisphere, and next week, on March 20th, we'll find that the day is just as long as the night. That's where the word equinox comes from. It's Latin, meaning equal night. And all around the world, this will be true. And although this is something that happens in the natural world, we still can learn from it in our own lives. In fact, that's a big part of our Unitarian Universalist faith, learning from nature. Like all rituals or observances, marking the spring equinox is a way for us to honor the changes in our lives and in our hearts as the world changes around us. Most importantly, this time of year invites us to pay attention. 4 months ago in December, we honored the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. We honored the light and the dark as two very important and equal partners of strength and rest and reflection. We looked back on the year that had passed to remember what we had been through and all that we had learned, and we honored it by setting intentions for the year to come. Now here we are, a quarter of the way into the year. Can you believe it? And now, once more, nature is offering us another invitation. While we'll always need rest and reflection, this time of the year can be really energizing for many of us. All that transformation we reflected on in December, it's an active swing right now here in March. You might find that people are spring cleaning, getting rid of all the stuff in their homes, clearing out the closets and the hallways and all those little hidey spaces that we haven't paid attention to for a long time. All around us, we see the signs of emergence and growth. All around us, we see nature waking up and stretching her arms. And we'll experience more and more of this over the season as summer comes and approaches. But the spring equinox is next week. And therefore, we want to invite you into a practice over the next few days. And this is how this practice will work. Each day, we'll provide prompts or suggestions for activities or spiritual practices that you can engage in, either solo by yourself or with others like your friends or your family. We'll make sure to post these prompts on Facebook and on our website and any other place to make sure that everybody gets a chance to join in. The prompts will look a little bit like this. It might look a little different in color or shape, but this is the general idea. We'll be using the 5 practices of Transcendentalism. Now, the Transcendentalists are a lot like our cousins. We come from the same family in a lot of ways, and we hold a lot of the same values. For example, they find great spiritual value in nature and contemplation, believing that we all share a piece of the divine. So we'll be sharing 5 of their spiritual practices of how they honor the world around them, paired with 5 lessons that nature is teaching us during this time of spring equinox. Now, you can send us pictures of you doing the activity or something that reminds you of the activity that you've done. Your picture might even end up in one of our slideshows during a service one day if you want. The most important thing is to immerse ourselves in this time of renewal and revival that we find all around us. After all, our cold days may or may not be behind us. Nature is on nobody's schedule but its own, and it's the same in our own lives. The hardships from the previous year, they may not be fully behind us. We may not have learned every lesson that we need to learn, but we can make meaning still. We can and do find ways to emerge in our lives. We can and do find ways to grow. We can and do find ways to honor ourselves as we honor one another, as we honor the earth around us. So let's get to some spiritual practice this week. Let's let ourselves emerge and renew once more again. May it be so. Blessed be.
Our congregation is a container for so much, for the spiritual practices that can sustain us, not just for the programming, but for the connections and the community. And so in addition to this week's week of spiritual practice shared together, there is so much to let you know about what we're doing, about what we're dreaming up in the coming weeks and months here at River Road. If you're not getting our e-weekly newsletter, sign up today online to get more information about everything that's happening in our community. Follow us on Facebook, get connected to our social media for this and so much more. including the fact that early registrations will begin soon for our all congregation retreat on June 19th and 20th, with both socially distanced outdoor programming in person on the 19th and online connections on the 20th. We are in the very early stages of planning outdoor Vesper services at a beautiful location in Carter Rock during the summer once each month. And we're offering a variety of outdoor programming for families and children leading up to and around Easter. Our spring services auction is going to go online this April, so start thinking about what good gifts you can lift up to the good of the whole. And in fact, and always, if you are eligible for a vaccine under Maryland state laws, you know that your pastoral care team is here to help you. Drop a line today or anytime to pastoralcare@ruuc.org for connections to vaccine hunting assistance, which so far, I swear, has never failed to come through for our folks. In fact, there are more vaccine hunters trained and ready to help than there are folks reaching out for that service. In this week's eWeekly, you'll find out more about how you can share that information with communities and stakeholders, even past our congregation. We have got your back. We are here to help. And equity in this vaccine distribution could not be more important than it is right now. You can also check out the many ways to serve our community, the many ways to make a tangible difference. From Shelter Week, where we need you to sign up to help feed and support families in the Montgomery County Women's and Children's Shelter, to a wonderful event in May, when we'll team up with longstanding community partners to provide food and supplies, new items and gift cards, the things that they need the most to get through these difficult times. Note that this event, which will happen in May, we haven't figured out the title yet. It'll hold a place once occupied by our annual bazaar. The bazaar as we know and love it won't take place this spring. It will resume on November 4th, raring to go in the fall with all the energy and importance it always brings. But for now, every activity, every action we do exists to create a space to simply be together, especially when we need each other the most, especially in our times of joy and concern. And so this week in our joys and our concerns, we grieve the death of Mary Rose Curtis, one among us who shaped us in so many ways over the span of generations. Mary Rose died peacefully in her Charlottesville home on March 4th at 94 years of age. River Roaders will remember Mary Rose and Jim Curtis when they arrived at River Road in the 1970s when Jim became our minister. Mary Rose herself, she went back to work to support Jim's theological education so that he could make his way to congregations such as ours. She spent her time among us working tirelessly for social justice. She and Jim created an integrated coffee house in the South while serving in Norfolk in the 1960s when such a thing was almost unimaginable. She brought that passion for equality to their shared ministry here at River Road. She shaped our story and gave us what we needed to become who we are today. During their ministry and after Jim's death while he served us, she continued to work for workers' rights, women's rights, international peace. She even won a United Nations Human Rights Award from the community here in the greater DC area. For over 50 years, she lived a commitment within our faith to what she believed. She was so grateful that this place was her home base for her endeavors and for her hope. And so rest in peace, good and faithful servant. We also lift up this week the whole nation as the trial of Officer Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd is underway in Minneapolis. For those traumatized and re-traumatized by these events and what is to come, we make a space of hope and care. We lift up this week all the students, all the parents and teachers and administrators and families preparing for shifts in online and in-person school. May there be space for grace amid all the chaos. May we look for the helpers and give thanks for all those who make a way forward. And finally, we hold up all of us who are feeling like we live on a lonely island. With vaccinations feeling both near to hand and entirely too far away, we pray for resilience and for persistence and for the courage to do the next right thing.
My life is wildly different today than it was a year ago. Because of this pandemic, I live in a different place with different people. My job has been affected, my sleep, my healthcare options, my daily routines are all different because of this pandemic. As a Chinese American, I even doubt my safety and my access to resources in ways that I never had to experience before. And I don't know when things will be different. I don't even know what different looks like. But I do know one thing. There is one place where I have control. Over and over, there is one place where I have control, no matter what is spiraling out of control. I have the control to choose who and how I will live through this pandemic. And so too, we all have this choice. And so in this time of prayer, I invite you to imagine, close your eyes or soften your gaze, take a deep breath, let it all out. Imagine, who do you wish to be? How do you wish to be when those around you are sick, perhaps dying and in need? Who or how do you wish to be when you yourself are sick and in need? Imagine it. Who or how do you wish to be when those around you are in financial distress, perhaps hungry and without a place to sleep? Who or how do you wish to be when you are struggling to make ends meet? Who do you wish to be when the country is deeply divided and looking for people at every level of interaction to model our principles of equity, justice, democracy, and interdependence? Who do you wish to be while our country is pressing for an overdue response to the harm being done every moment of every day because of our ongoing lies of white superiority? Who or how do you wish to be while our country is pressing for a reckoning to centuries of injustice? Who or how do you wish to be among humans whose desire for ease of life and consumption of goods is killing our planet? Who do you wish to be right now? After a full year of disruption and grief and stress and pressure and fear, without a clear end in sight, who will you choose to be, knowing that your children and your children's children are watching? Who do you wish to be in a world needing leaders who are forces for good? Who will you choose to be in the midst of fear, in the midst of disappointment, in the midst of anger, regret? In a time of shared silence, I invite you to imagine the best version of yourself possible, the fullest expression of who you are and who you want to be, and how you could live out that version now in this time of opportunity and this time of great possibility.
Spirit of life, come.
In building a community, in choosing who we need to be as individuals in the world and who we are called to be as a community, we also have the opportunity to ask how we're going to create it. One of the ways we create who we need to be is through your generosity. And here in our stewardship season, we are so blessed that here, just a couple of weeks into our stewardship campaign, we have heard from half of you. We are so grateful and need to hear from the other half as soon as possible to know how River Road can move forward in the coming year. Please pledge now for the life and the work of the congregation, knowing that every pledge is appreciated and needed no matter the amount. The participation of the whole is a gift to us. We give not until it hurts, but until it feels good at the amount that we can spare in a given time, knowing that it is not about the numbers, but about what we weave from our shared participation. This week, we also have a new pledge challenge that we announced in the e-weekly. We'd love to hear from at least 25 new pledgers as soon as possible so that River Road can receive an additional $13,000 in support for our congregation. Know that if you are a new pledger and you give even a small amount this week, it is increased by the generosity of others to serve the congregation. If you're new to River Road or just never got around to making a pledge to the annual campaign, you can help us meet that challenge this week. Click the green pledge button on our website or send an email to stewardship@rruuc.org with the amount you'd like to pledge, knowing that every amount is exactly enough. And this morning's offering, indeed, as always, will be gratefully received. To donate, go to rruuc.org/give, or you can text to give at 73256, then message RRUUC in the amount. Thanks as always to every single one of us who makes the way forward together.
Shalom, Havarim, Shalom, Shalom. Lahitraot, Lahitraot, Shalom, Shalom, my friends, Shalom, my friends, Shalom, Shalom. Till we meet again, till we meet again, Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, Havarim, Shalom, Havarim, Shalom, Havarim, Shalom.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Darcy Roque of Community Church Unitarian Universalist in New Orleans, and it is a joy to be with you virtually today. And so I begin with a blessing of masks. Bless these masks these sometimes uncomfortable swatches of fabric that save our lives and sometimes our sanity, when it's enough to see each other's eyes, to be in each other's 6 feet apart presence. Bless the wild and colorful masks that remind us that we are alive and funny, even amidst pandemic tragedy and monotony. Bless this vote mask and the sacred work our American people did to ensure our imperfect and essential democracy. May we keep this mask and this message as we fight against the continuing assault on voting rights, particularly for people of color. Bless this good enough mask for those times when just getting through the day with its sorrow, its anxiety, its Zoom is an accomplishment. Bless this chalice mask, born of the creativity and care of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as we create ways for us to be together virtually here and also to protect ourselves and others outside our sanctuary walls. Bless the day when these masks come off for good. Not simply when a politician or individual cries, "Freedom for me alone," but when we, as a people, experience no more mass pandemic death or full hospitals or grieving isolated folks. May we then take off our masks, real and metaphorical, and celebrate together, and grieve together, and continue our sacred work of justice and care together. Bless these masks that reveal much more about ourselves than they conceal, as a people of faith and a faithful people. Amen.
A stone set on another stone can be a marker of hope. This cairn of stones here in the Sonoran Desert is about 30 miles north of the US-Mexico border. My congregation, Borderlands Unitarian Universalists, built this cairn to mark the way for migrants heading north through here, and to recall the many, too many, who have died coming this way. Cairns in Scotland are markers for journeys, and they can show travelers crossing unknown lands that others have come this way, or they can stand as enduring rituals, remembering those who have died. And we've built this cairn within that tradition. Stones set here are placed by those who envision an end to those deaths by giving direct aid to migrants out here, and by dismantling U.S. policy that intentionally forces migrants into the harshest part of the desert. I don't have much from my Scottish heritage. I know a romanticized story of political persecution that caused the Macquaries to flee their home, lose their name, and forget all but a few things. And it was generations ago, so I don't know what it's like to be a migrant. But I do have a traditional blessing gifted through the years. I will set a stone on your stone. And in reclaiming my heritage, I've come to learn that this is why cairns exist. It is a promise of one to another to journey in life and into death. Despite our Unitarian Universalist faith being aspirational, we don't talk much about hope. As the tradition of white Universalist abolitionist, the Reverend Theodore Parker, we do believe the arc of the moral universe is a long one, but we bend it toward justice together. Our living covenants, our sacred promises to one another, envision a global future of peace and liberty and justice for us all. But there's not a lot about hope. I suspect we don't include hope that much because we're seeking something that has real action in it. Well, at least I am. White elder and systems teacher Joanna Macy, she defines this kind of hope as the journey of finding and of offering our unique contribution. And this helps us to discover new strengths, open to a wider network of allies, and experience a deepening of our own aliveness. I will put a stone on your stone. Now, the first stone set on one another, it may not feel like much, but when they pile up and become a marker of active hope, when they pile up, they become a marker of our active hope. They become the signal to people on a journey together, each stone a unique contribution in a growing connection of allies, stronger and even more alive than any of us were alone. I will set a stone on your stone, and we will make a marker of hope here in the desert, in the midst of an immigration crisis, and together as a marker of our faith through this traumatic time when it is the promise just to be there on a journey that gives us all hope.
You make plans and God laughs. You make plans and the universe often has other ideas. This was brought home on a global scale a year ago when a global pandemic was declared by the World Health Organization. So much has happened in unexpected ways. We all had different plans, right? Whatever they were, all were wiped away like a chalkboard. Perhaps for me, the biggest lesson or where I found hope the most was in connection. Humans need connection to each other as much as we need food and water and air. Connections to each other sustain us, and we can celebrate the joys so much more fully when we are connected. We can receive solace and compassion and empathy and care when we are struggling within those connections. This year illuminated for those who perhaps didn't quite realize how connected we truly are as human beings. Now, yes, millions and millions and globally billions of people were asked to change their daily behavior, many to stay home so that we don't spread the coronavirus any faster. People were asked to wear masks and shelter in place. Not everyone was asked to do that. There were millions of people, essential workers, frontline workers, people picking our food to sustain us, never stopped working these last 12 months, did not have the privilege to stay home and shelter in place. And some of those workers did not have personal protection equipment. And there was the recognition by organizers and those who were closest to the people who were asked day after day after day to put their lives on the line. Those folks made very clear on social media that people they love were putting their lives at risk. We lost many, many people. Unitarian Universalism lost two significant Black leaders, Reverend Hope Johnson and Alandria Williams. I say their names. They are two people who I loved dearly and were close to. I was close to and friends with. And we affirm and love the connections that they had, both globally. And what gives me hope is the impact of the connections that continue long after we're gone, right? Is that we love each other and affirm each other through connection. My hope moving forward is that we remember that we are here to care for each other, to love each other in community, both together, the community that we have around us geographically, and the global community. My hope and prayer is that we remain connected and caring for each other long after the pandemic is over. Blessed be.
The poet was born on December 10th of 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. It was the town in which she would spend nearly every day of her life. And while almost no images of her survive, those few that do show a young woman whose face is almost entirely consumed by these large, searching eyes. She spent her life almost entirely within the confines of small rooms in a small town, gazing at the same four walls, out the same window, while the whole world swung around her, and a universe of ideas dwelled within her. There she was, Emily Dickinson. Looking out the green slats of the drawn shutters, she saw this beautiful world and she translated it into thousands upon thousands of terse, gorgeous poems, scratched fiercely on spare slips of paper and shared with those she loved, sometimes through half-closed doors. She lived her life through the slats of that closed window, seeing only one tiny garden and the turning of the seasons within it, one tree, one stone, one flower, one home. Yet her great talent through it all was not just her writing. Her great talent through it all was, in fact, to hope and to never stop hoping. As she famously put it, hope is a thing with feathers that perches on the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Dickinson speaks of hope as something that arrives quite independent of all of our mighty and impossible and inevitably failed efforts to succeed. She speaks of hope as something that does not sing loudest when we think we are winning at a game we were never meant to play, but instead as that which sings loudest in the longest night, adrift in the strangest sea, all alone with the reality that life is often not what we planned it to be. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches on the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Never stops at all. Not even when things are not as they should be, not even when the world is too small and the stakes are too high. And I've thought of Dickinson often during this last year since we have been together apart. Since last we gathered to worship right here in the backyard of our nation's capital, where I am blessed to serve in ministry. I thought of her looking out that same window among those same four walls as I swept the same floor and washed the same dishes and cried the same tears over and over again for different people lost to the pandemic, lost to systemic injustice, lost always to time. I've thought about the way in which hope for the poet was not attached to outcomes, but to a state of being that transcends those outcomes. A state of being which is connected and apart, alone and together, sorrowful and powerful, all at the same time. Echoing all the poets who came before her. Alicia Garza, the organizer and founder who allied with others to plant the seed that became the Black Lives Matter movement. She wrote in her book, The Purpose of Power, that hope is not the absence of despair. Instead, it is the ability to come back to our purpose again and again and again, because hope keeps singing through it all. My work, Garza continues, is to transform grief and despair and rage into the love that we need to push us forward. And we are not defined by what we lack. We are defined by how we come together when we fall apart. In this way, we too are not defined by the narrow walls of the rooms in which we have stayed safe in this year. We are not defined by the spaces in which we were once accustomed to gathering in worship. We are not defined by the buildings that we have treasured all along, nor are we defined by what we lack, but by how we come together when we fall apart, when much has not gone according to plan, yet still hope, that fragile and resilient thing. It perches on our shoulders, reminding us how very much we have always been connected to each other, connected to the holy, and connected to the world. When we are defined not by what we lack, but by every single thing that is in our power to create. May it be so, and amen. It is my lucky task to offer gratitudes for everyone who brought this service to us today. Of course, I want to thank Schwai, Cliff, our full choir, our men's ensemble, including and especially Walt Scott and Brock Holmes, Dave for editing, for tech, for every amount of encouragement that we need to get through it. Of course, Jesse and Mandy for work in the Zoom room. Our very special gratitude also to Jana Kirkman and our financial stewardship team, and to Darcy Roque, Matthew Crary, Aisha Hauser, Pamela Watt, and Kimberly Quinn Johnson, who will share a benediction, and so many others for their wisdom. Along with Nathan Ryan at the UU Church of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who helped to wrangle all of these ministers. And thank you to the amazing Reverend Walter LaFleur, whose prayerful blessing as a part of this collection will be posted in the middle of the week as a part of your spiritual practices to ground and guide you as we move forward in the days ahead amid all of your various one-year anniversaries. For all of us, and for all of us who bring this meaning to each other, we are grateful. Thank you.
Know this, dear friends, you are not alone. In your loss, you are not alone. In your grief, you are not alone. In your anger, in your suffering, your fear, in your failure and frustrations, you are not alone. In your uncertainty, you are not alone. Even as we distance, you are not alone. Do not be discouraged by all that we cannot control, because the world is not ours to control, but to make meaning. Instead, trust in the power of this great community of shared faith. Delight in what we are creating, new and imaginative ways of being together. In our joy, we are together. In our celebration, we are together. In our success, in our struggle, in our striving, we are together. In our hope, we are together. Know this, dear friends, we are together always.
Our service has ended today. Again, what a gift